March 2025 Planning Commission meeting for Millcreek. And we've got a quorum. We've got 4 of us up here and then 1 online. Jacob Richardson is joining us remotely. So before we get underway, I've got a statement to read and then we'll get going. So those of you that are here, there's a sign-in sheet. We'd ask if you just fill that out so we know who attended our meeting this evening. The Planning Commission is a voluntary citizen board. The Commission's agenda items fall within 2 main categories, administrative and legislative. And we've got 1 of each tonight on the agenda. So examples of administrative items are conditional use and subdivision applications, and that's one we have tonight, subdivision. For these applications, the Planning Commission is interested in input about mitigating effects of a proposed development. However, our discretion is limited since we must also precisely apply the city's ordinances and state law. And examples of legislative items are rezone applications and changes to the zoning ordinances. And we have one of those looking at the city center overlay zone. The Planning Commission will provide a recommendation to the City Council, and we have more discretion in the suggestions we provide to them. Our decisions are based upon recommendations from planning staff and other agencies, the Community Council recommendations, field observations, and information presented at the public hearing this evening, including a presentation by the applicant and testimony from the public. I just also want to mention to the Planning Commission, we received the application or the packets from the staff before this meeting. We review those individually, but we don't talk about those until we're in this public meeting tonight. So our first item on the agenda is SD 24015, and this is a request for a 5-lot subdivision, and this will be presented by Carlos.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. This is a request for a mayor subdivision, a 5-lot subdivision at a property located approximately around 815 and 839 East, 4200 South. Again, that is to accommodate 5 single-family lots in the R1 zone. The applicant is Brooke Moore. File application SD 24014. I guess just to begin with, I want to give you an overall context of what the neighborhood is. This is the subject property. Again, it's located along the Grand Cayman Road Drive, and as you can see, there's parcels basically intersecting what would have been a street, but in this case, again, it's just a property that it's looking into subdividing, again, A19 and A39. This is more in depth, the current state of the lots that are being subdivided. Again, R15, and just as a context, this application did go through a rezone application not too long ago. Here, Brad Sanderson was one of the planners that was in charge of that application, if you do happen to have any questions about the rezone. But basically, R15 lots, neighborhood basically composed of R15 to the north. The lot directly adjacent north to this property is actually an R28, which is one of the R210, one of the unique zones around this neighborhood. But again, all of it is residential with a few R110 properties south with, as you can see, are more of the elongated lots in this neighborhood. So the proposal will look something like this, in which they are proposing a cul-de-sac style access branching out or extending from 4170 South Street. The current connection is just meant to currently provide for the properties that are being proposed for subdivision. Again, all of the R15, and then 5-lot subdivision. This is just the proposed plat indicating the 5 lots. I do want to make a mention that in this specific plat, there was the identification of a overhead power line. This, after some research, came up to be a communications line. However, it is still a overhead line that needs to be addressed, whether it is abandoned or whether actually relocated, which is likely to be the actual mitigation to this overhead power line. If we were to actually lift this power line, we will need to do an easement for that overhead line, which would, in a way, bisect some of these buildable areas on these lots, which, staff can. We just couldn't approve something that an area that is being bisected or that is eating out some of the buildable area by an easement. And so, again, the recommendation is to relocate that post, and it is something that the applicant is currently and actively working on. Again, some of the actual facts and findings on this property. Again, the 2 parcels are comprising of 0.84 acres. 5 lots, all R15. They all are above 5,000 square feet, which is the minimum lot size for the R15 property. They all range, or are below the 6,000 square feet mark, for the exception of lot 3. Sorry. And again, a few of these are 50 feet in width, for the exception of lot 3 and 4, which are 68 and 62 feet each. There will be dedication, which is approximately 7,289 square feet of land that, again, will be allocated to what will be their access. The newly created access is an extension, again, to 4170 South, and has been designed to eventually connect to Grand Cayman Drive once the property on 838 East, 4125 South starts developing. Again, this is not something that we know that will be developed, but if it happens that development comes to this property, there may be a possibility to connect Grand Cayman to 4170 South. Additionally, there was no development agreement recommended through the rezoning application, and so basically we just have to rely to our underlying ordinances, such as the subdivision and the zoning ordinances. And so, to conclude, again, the subdivision of property will effectively create 5 individual lots for ownership. The major subdivision will not create any remnants or other unusable lots of parcels. Again, the newly created lots, this subdivision will not limit the city's ability to effectively provide services or facilities in this neighborhood. A communication overhead line will need to be relocated prior to plat approval. And apart from that, the proposal does meet the city and state requirements pertaining to subdivisions. The project will still be subject to further review and final approval, which is what we call technical review. And so with that being said, staff recommendation is that based on the findings and conclusions listed, staff recommends the Planning Commission to take public comments and approve application file number SD 24015, unless during the hearing facts are presented contradict these findings or new facts are presented, which will warrant further investigation by staff. And the motion with that is that based on the findings and conclusions, I move that the Planning Commission approve application file number SD 24015 with a condition to resolve the communications utility line prior to final approval and plat recordation.
Chair,
Do you have any questions?
Yes.
can I make just one point? Our ordinance requires underground of the utility, so not just relocation, but the undergrounding of the utility.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Carlos, that's something you could then also put into,
Yes.
note that, okay.
So they'll be putting it underground, right? That's what you're
Yes.
saying?
Commissioners, questions for Carlos? And Carlos, I did have one, if you could go back to a site map. Actually, yeah, go back to that one right there. Okay. I was looking at kind of where that lower, the bottom X, it looks like that building will be demolished. There's kind of the larger square.
Right.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the clarification. Because without it, it looks like there wouldn't be enough width.
I actually had one question now that I'm looking at it. The slide that has the roadway showing, I'm just wondering what's happening in that other space on the north, east.
So nothing is currently happening in that part. It's just a mock-up drawing probably of what it is envisioned for that road to happen once that is developed. But the only development that that we're concerning with is what's shown on that blue square. That is what's being proposed. The other lot, as you can see, the lot on the north right now, it's just pretty much empty. And it does hold different ownership.
So is there any way of making that be a pocket park or something?
It's outside of the subdivision, so probably not. We don't have a way to require that as dedication because we don't have a plan for a park in this particular area.
Right. It would entirely be up to the owner for this lot to be developed.
Yeah, I'm talking about that other space. Yeah, that's within the isn't it? I mean, the road curves, isn't it within the subdivision?
Are you talking about the small shoulder there?
Maybe, I don't, yeah, just, right, like there, all that area. I mean, because it seems like there's some space there.
Yeah, there's going to be about 5 feet, looks like, behind the sidewalk line.
Oh, what's
Right.
this?
Yeah. So
This is the road?
No, the sidewalk here.
Oh, that's the sidewalk. Oh. Darn.
right, and
Okay.
and the it really will depend, right, on the design. I mean, the current design that is just being mocked up, drawn, just by looking at it, I doubt there will be any space to actually account for a buildable residential lot. It will be more the northern part after we leave that little knuckle of a road. So again, it will really depend on the design, but I highly doubt it. And so to the other questions into what can be done with that leftover space, that will probably be something to back and analyze.
Thank you. Other questions for Carlos? And let's just check with Jacob too. Jacob, I recognize that you're streaming with us online. Any questions? Okay, thank you. All right, Carlos, and is the applicant with us this evening, either in person or streaming?
Yeah, she's.
Is there anything you wanted to add what Carlos presented? Yeah, I'll have you come up to the podium and then give us your name and address for the record.
I'm Brooke, and the address is 1265 East Fort Union Boulevard. So the section that you guys were talking about that extra little piece. We were planning on dedicating it to the property owner to just kind of give that to them.
That
And
little
then-
5-foot section there, yeah.
We'll just dedicate it. That's what the city recommended. And then the communication line, I am in the works of working with Lumen and CenturyLink to get that placed in the PUE. So I was hoping to get their written approval before tonight, but they're super slow. But we are in the works, and we plan on having that completed by the time approval happens.
Okay. Well, thank you. Any questions, commissioners, for Ms. Moore? All right, thank you. And subdivisions don't go to community councils, so we don't have any input from them on this. So at this point, I'd like to open up the public comments for this application. If you have comments, please come up to the podium and give us your name, and if you'd like, your address and your comments.
Joffrey Bird, and I'm at 4162 South Megan Circle, which is 4170 South. First of all, will these homes be facing north from south, or will they go from the west side all the way back to the west side on the cul-de-sac?
And I'll note down your questions, and then when we're done with the public hearing, I'll give the staff of the applicant an opportunity if they'd like to respond. But you're curious about the direction of the homes.
Okay. And we're talking about running a street that's, will be just right at my my bedroom. Will come right to, all the cars will come right into my bedroom. And it sounds like it's not feasible to put a street there. It's, first of all, it's not enough to even turn. If a fire engine had to go through, they wouldn't be able to turn it either right or left off of Cannon Avenue. So I guess I could ask the planning committee not to try to put a street through.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments on this application? And Carlos, has anything come through online? I don't believe any emails have come through on this application.
I have not received any commentary, no.
And nothing on our streaming meeting this evening?
Elise, do we have gotten any comments online?
Nothing? Okay. No. Thank you. Then I'll close the public hearing for this. Actually, I'm going to keep it open just momentarily. See, Ms. Moore, if you'd wanted to respond to, you don't have to, but if you'd like to give information on the direction of the homes.
The directions of the homes will face east. Well, I guess some of them.
Yeah, it's likely that lot 1, lot 2 will face east.
Yeah.
Lot 3 will probably face northeast, whereas
Northeast, and then-
lot 4 and 5 will be north, right? Everything basically facing the right of way.
Yeah, that's the plan. And then on the street, what was the second question? I didn't understand it.
I think it was access for that
On
street to go
4170,
through.
you're right on that corner, right? Yeah, so, I mean, just that road, isn't that road already stubbed right there? So you're just talking about the traffic? Yeah, so it would be traffic for 5 new homes.
Thank you. And then Carlos, just confirmation that UFA, Unified Fire Authority, probably reviews the plans to make sure that the access for their vehicles can
Right, they have,
negotiate the proposal of the road.
right, they have been reviewing that, and I have not really received anything differently. It's something that we will continue working on technical review.
Okay, thank you. I'll close the public hearing and then bring this back to Planning Commission for a discussion and a motion. And Jacob, since you're streaming, I'll let you offer any thoughts on this if you'd like. Okay, thanks for the comments. Other thoughts? We don't need to go through and get thoughts from everybody if, just we can have a discussion if we need one. If not, if we're ready for a motion, I'd entertain that too.
I can do it. Based on the findings and conclusions contained within the staff report, I move the Planning Commission approve application file number SD 24015 with a condition that the communications utility line be relocated underground prior to final approval and plat recordation.
Second.
A motion by Reed and a second by Lofgren. Let's go ahead and do a voice vote for this one, and then Richard will, or excuse me, Jacob will get your vote in just a moment. Those live here, all in favor, say yes or aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Anybody opposed? And Jacob? Okay, thank you. That motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll move to the next item, ZT 25002. This is an amendment to the city center overlay zone regarding building step backs. Francis, it's all yours.
I'm actually going to turn the time over to Robert.
Okay. Robert, it's all yours.
We'll tag team this as needed, but Rob can just hit me if he wants me to talk. Thanks, man. See ya.
Good evening. You guys ready to start agenda item number 1.2?
Let's do it.
Okay. I slimmed this down. I mean, this is a healthy sized staff report, but for the presentation, I slimmed it down so it kind of give us some more time to discuss. So we'll cruise through this and then let's just kind of talk about it afterwards. Oh, there we go. Let me back up. for the record, ZT 25002, text amendment revising the city center overlay zone building step back requirements. So this is just basically kind of giving you, an outline look at, what was requested, the staff's petitioning city council to amend the city center's building step back requirements. In the staff report, I detailed what the current limitations are and the development challenges. Here, I'm not going to read through this, but the images kind of showcase what the current step backs are, which is, as you can see, generally it's a 20-foot step back after the second floor, but they do have the option to do two 10-foot step backs as well. And this would be, any building over 40 feet in height and or any development fronting Millcreek Common, 33rd, Richmond, and Highland Drive. So this is kind of where it starts to get confusing, and when we're finished with the presentation, I'll gladly kind of walk through it and answer any questions. But due to those challenges that I talked about in the staff report, we wanted to take a step back. City center overlay zone is over probably 5, 6, 7 years old now. And we need to kind of take a fresh look at this and kind of provide some alternatives, some ideas, instead of having this 20-foot step back, building step back, our only mitigation tool kind of for mitigating mass and bulk and that. So our idea was, let's kind of come up with some options. And I spoke to probably a handful of architects and went, kind of debated back and forth what was the best tactic to kind of move forward with this. And, came up with some options based off of these themes: aesthetic, compatibility, and public benefit. As you can see, the aesthetic is just, let's just attack it through design enhancements, 8 of them. I included the design enhancements in the staff report, but I also included as a supporting document. Hopefully that helped you guys in the end. That had all the kind of some images, examples of what that is. So the first one is just, hey, we're going to do 8 of them. Second one is kind of puts it more into a box, right? And it's a 200 by 150 foot box, but then you got to do 5 of those. And the public benefit based option, which I think maybe in the staff report, I can't remember. It doesn't matter. It was coined as performance, but we changed it to public benefit, which is, give us, in exchange for a building step back, give us shared parking, open space, there could be a bunch of different things there. So that was the third option. And this I don't know, I mean, we're still talking about it, but this map likely probably won't be in the actual text amendment, maybe. I made it really as an explanation for you guys so you could see, we're not getting rid of building step backs, but we're providing an alternative. Where in this map clearly just shows where you're eligible for that alternative, that one of those options, whichever one we come up with, and then areas where you would be ineligible. As you can see, right now around the Common and then on Highland Drive north of Chambers Avenue is the only areas ineligible in this proposal. Here's that design enhancement list. I'm going to take 30, 40 minutes and read through each and every one. No, and then, but you guys have the list. So, and then the community, I summed up the community council recommendation. The Mount Olympus Community Council, Millcreek Community Council, and Canyon Rim Citizen Association had very similar dialogue, but there was comments all over the place, but very similar. They all landed on, we need to do something. We like the public benefit. We should get some benefit out of if we're going to reduce a building step back. East Millcreek, similar conversation, but at the end of the meeting, they just couldn't land on one of the options, and then they had proposed maybe a development agreement style option where, well, in exchange for a step back, we should engage in a development agreement, which is, we kind of do that anyway. These projects are conditional use permits, and they come with conditions. We get that second take at it anyway.
Hey, Robert, just real quick, if you go back to the slides that talk about the 30 or so design standards, I think it is worth mentioning that Rob actually went all over the country, kind of looking at form-based codes and looking at alternatives to step back. Some form-based codes don't require step back, some do. They haven't been deployed as a consistent tool throughout the country, but we look to identify alternatives that were meaningful, right? Meaningful in terms of that the city actually gets something of value in terms of design standards in lieu of that setback, because we do acknowledge, right, or step back, sorry, because we do acknowledge that step backs themselves have value, and we didn't want to bring anything to you that we didn't think was of at least comparable value, if that makes sense. Sorry.
No, and Francis is 100% right. This list actually used to be longer, and we just kind of sussed out stuff that, maybe that's not a fair trade, or let's actually attach the design enhancements that are meaningful tools for mitigating mass, right? The perception of mass in bulk. There's all kinds of tactics out there, and we thought we don't have, we can put in a handful of these, but let's make sure the ones that are in there are meaningful. Community council recommendation, staff findings, tried to and I do this with all my staff report, especially text amendments, we try to link them to, the support. And so what you're seeing here in these five findings come right out of the city center master plan, and which is in the staff report, and that sort of backs up staff's findings and ultimately a recommendation. So that's, like I said, I slimmed it down so we could have some more conversation time, and I put some model motions that we can dissect later, or you guys can use. But yeah, let's have a discussion about it.
Okay. Well, thanks, Rob. Good stuff there. I know it was a lot of time pulling all that stuff together. I do have a high-level question. If you could go back to that map that showed the green and the blue. I just want to make sure that I understand this. So the blue would be eligible under this proposal to have relief from a...
Any of the proposals, right? Any of the options that we land on are tied to, you know, these areas.
The areas just in blue, and the areas in green
Would be ineligible.
ineligible, and that's because that's how they're already built, or...
Well, some, you know, I mean, they are, a lot of them are built, but
Yeah.
I think the main, or the primary factor behind, excuse me, and Francis can add to this too, is, you know, it was always staff or city's, you know, intent to preserve, you know, the view shed and, you know, the massiveness and bulkiness of the Mountain Air neighborhood. And the reason why we did north of Chambers is because south of that on Highland, you know, is mostly commercial. And right at Chambers is where Highland Drive necks down from basically a major collector to a minor collector, 106 to a 90-foot right of way. And so, and that makes a big difference when you have that big of a gap between buildings. But
Yeah, and the other thing we know, you know, we have made some observations of kind of the mountain aspects, the views, and if you're on Highland Drive and you look at Lone Peak, it kind of creates the shield that goes into Draper, and the shield necks down, it tapers down as you go west, and it actually, if you're on Highland Drive, it intersects at about, you know, the top of the I mean, it depends a little bit on where you sit or where you drive or where you walk, but it intersects at about the top of the roof of Tres Hombres, right? And so in that case, you know, whether the view shed impact of seeing Lone Peak, right, down Highland Drive wouldn't be affected by whether there was a setback or not on the west side, right?
But the main difference between the green and the blue here are, like, I guess I just want to understand, like, the green would still be required regardless.
Correct.
You would still keep the current
they wouldn't
step
be
backs.
right. They wouldn't be eligible.
They're not eligible.
Right, and you can kind of think of these three options as apertures, right? And so the aperture is closed if you're on Highland Drive north of Chambers Avenue or along Millcreek Common. But the aperture opens depending upon how big we want it to open.
Right.
The narrowest opening possible is the public benefit option.
And then this is, again, only for 40 feet and above, because if currently as the code is written, if you're up to 40 feet, you don't need a step back.
Right, correct. Or if you put it, it says or, it's not an and. It kind of gets me too when I read that too, but it says or fronting on the Common, 33rd Highland or Richmond.
Okay. So this medical office building just right over here on Highland, I'm guessing that's about 40 feet tall.
40 feet, and then with the, I think it's like 44 with the
parapet wall.
parapet, yeah.
Yeah. So that gives us that would make sense because there's no step back on there. So that's our kind of the max. Over that, the code currently says do step back. And you said earlier, I think it was a 10-foot.
Right, you could do
step
two
back.
10s or a 20. You know, and keep in mind the medical office building, we, you know, if you guys remember, we came back and we did that exception, that it's the only exception that's currently in the code for single purpose commercial buildings that fit a certain footprint, right? And
Right, yeah.
we're at 40 feet or lower.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's why that one's there. And that's kind of what we've learned over the course of you know, the city's, you know, adopting the city center overlay zone and TCAUS before it was CCAUS. And
so.
a lot of these parcels, these larger parcels, and some of the non-visible developments that are kind of in these neighborhood streets, Chambers, Woodland, Villa Vista, we're learning that maybe it's the step back, a 20-foot step back isn't, the best tool everywhere. We should have some options, and we can, and we should provide some alternatives. But on that same note, we should get something for that too in exchange.
Commissioners, other questions for Robert?
I have a couple questions. One is the city center overlay zone all in one city council or community council, or is it split?
Not technically, it's three. I mean, it's
Okay.
Millcreek, Canyon Rim, and East Millcreek. The boundary is right there at 33rd and Highland, that intersection there.
We also have a rule in our code that says that, if your project is within 600 feet of another community council district, it gets reviewed by both. So ironically, much of the city center is actually within 600 feet of 3 community council districts. So whenever we do a conditional use permit on a city center project, we get the input of 3 community councils for the most part.
Okay, I was just curious as to their responses that they wrote from the different meetings
Yeah.
as who had most ownership kind of thinking.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the Millcreek Community Council feels like they have the most ownership, right? Because the majority of the city center is in their area. They experience, most of the impacts, benefits, and otherwise of this development. And so, we spent a lot of time kind of working with them on their concerns.
So my second question is around the concept of how tall are we going to let people build in the city center? Like, if that's a 44-foot building, the medical office building, how tall are these apartments over here? And are we really going to let people build like a 100-foot?
No.
No, it's
Just-
capped at 75, and it's not changed.
Okay.
Didn't it go up though? I thought we've raised
Well-
it a couple times, and then you can have an additional 15 feet for elevators and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there are exceptions for like elevator towers and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
But the height typically is 75 feet. City Hall was allowed to go up to 90, but that's it. We're the tallest. Nothing can ever be taller than City Hall. And that 75-foot height isn't uniform throughout the city center. It really kind of depends on where you are. So
Yeah.
the heights east of Highland Drive, right, are limited, are capped to about 40 feet, right?
Yeah. That's my curiosity is if you now look at that office building, if you're down here, even if you're on the upper level of the common building right over there, you've lost a bunch of view, right, of behind that medical building. So I'm just curious as to where we're talking about letting people build to.
Right. No, good question.
But for the height, didn't we? I think we started at 75, and then we increased it to, I don't know if it was 85 or 88, but it seems like we did that, and then we came back again and then allowed for additional height for like 15 feet for the.
Well, there's the height
Mechanical.
exception, a 14-foot height exception
Yeah.
for elevators, mechanical, and so on.
But that's just on
that's
top of the
not-
75.
Right, that's not even, but that can't be occupiable space, right?
Right.
That's not more units,
And that's only tacked on to the 75?
that
That's
could,
for everything.
everything. In fact, we took that language and it used that same exception and put it into our height exception code throughout the city. 'Cause
So what's our height with the, non-occupiable space, like the maximum that you could have, parapet walls, everything included? Would it be
with parapet walls,
everything? Like the absolute maximum would be 75 plus the 15?
right?
And so you're going to end at,
But the 15, I mean, I can't honestly say that I've seen a height exception for parapets and,
Yeah.
mechanical equipment that's ever gone above
yeah.
5 or 10,
I just swore that we were in a couple years ago when we looked at it, that would bring the maximum of, I think it was like 110 or 100, and it was over 100, it seemed like, with that mechanical relief, if they use the maximum, but
No, I think that possibility does exist in the MD zone,
Okay,
right? But not in CCAS.
okay. Right. Commissioners, other questions?
Yeah, and the IF zone, I forgot, and maybe that's what we're talking about. I know that issue came up in the discussion of the hospital, and maybe that's where
Maybe
some of that
that's
comes
it.
from.
And IF zone is for the medical,
Correct.
it's kind of like the St. Mark's.
Yep,
area.
and that can get up to 110, I think.
It could have been in that.
Yeah, I think that's what you're talking about.
Okay.
And with this, my understanding may be incorrect, it often is. But is the idea behind this that there have been some proposed developments that didn't necessarily come to fruition because it was hard to comply with the setbacks as currently set?
Partially, yeah, yeah. You know, I don't know how many off the top, you know, I can think of probably 5 maybe off the top of my head that it just didn't pencil out. And kind of had to walk away. Some of them were really good projects that we were hoping would kind of morph through, but you know, for example, if you can visualize, you know, where the Crownburger's at, all the way to Woodland, between Chambers and Woodland, there was you know, a developer who was going to potentially assemble some land there, and he would have fronted on Chambers, Woodland, Highland, and there was a possibility even on the Common. So that would have been 4, you know, 20-foot building step backs. There's a bunch of them, irregular shaped, smaller lots that affect that, where that 20-foot building step back affects just is much more burdensome than it would be on a larger lot, you know, with maybe 1 step back. So the plan here is to keep, you know, the step backs are still there, but try to work through some you know, some alternatives that are meaningful to us that can still mitigate and alleviate the perception of bulkiness in some cases. And, you know, a really good example, and it's kind of too late now, but, you know, if you look at the medical office building, before they put that brick facade on, and that there's going to be this really dark wood in between the brick, it was just a big bulky plywood building, and it stood out like a sore thumb, and it just looked, when you drove by, it looked big. And over time, in the last few weeks, they've been inching away at that brick, and it's amazing how much these materials can help blend into the background and alleviate, you know, bulkiness. I mean, obviously it's still there. It's not that, this one's not that bulky really, but there's tools out there that we should have in our toolbox.
I have a couple questions. When I look at the map, and you can put that map back up, I feel, I'm just
This one?
wondering, yeah, I mean, would it be okay if we redrew the map? Because,
You guys can do whatever you want.
I mean, I know you've put a whole lot of time and thought into it. But to me,
did.
some of those areas are more important to preserve in terms of the feel and the walkability and the welcoming nature. And that would be the areas, you know, closest around here. But when I look at Richmond Avenue, like going north of Miller, I don't see that as important in terms of what it feels like. So I'm much more willing to give them options for not having setbacks. So anyway, is that on the table?
Yes,
to
I mean, as
discuss
part
that?
of your motion, you could say, you know, we think these blocks should not be eligible for step back reduction or step back flexibility.
Okay. And then I have a couple, because we're going to come back and discuss our ideas,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I'm
we'll-
just asking questions, right? So then I wanted you to explain the parking option, because, I mean, I can't see a bunch of surface parking. So it would be underground parking in their buildings, is that,
Or structured parking like we're doing here.
okay?
That's wrapped by buildings, right? You know,
Right, so it would be parking that was used by residents as well as the public?
It would be
or-
publicly available. It would have to be publicly available to, people visiting here, doing commerce here, eating at restaurants, visiting City Hall, coming to planning commission meetings.
Well, we know that I always have these issues about safety in parking lots, parking structures. So, and they need to have, in my mind, well, I'll talk about that later. Okay, and then I had a question about, on option number 8, does extra 10 feet of sidewalk mean an extra 10 feet of setback or just 10 feet more of concrete?
It would be 10 feet more setback.
Setback, okay, good.
And that was a big one. Open space, plaza space. To me, I think after going to, the community councils next to the public benefit and having that parking, because everybody's addressed parking, but plaza space, open space, more, and not just more concrete, but more landscaping, more little grassy knolls to hang out on, right?
Yeah, and I guess going back to the parking, I mean, has there been any kind of a parking study where we know that there's going to be inadequate parking? Or are we just saying, oh, well, parking's always good?
No.
So we have the benefit of looking out our window and kind of seeing how the space is used. And there are indeed times where the parking is inadequate. We are actually doing a parking study to identify opportunities for extra parking, around Millcreek Common in a way that doesn't create a sea of surface parking lots. And I think, we know that, on particularly busy days, this place does fill up and we can use a little extra parking, right? And we know that because, even though we're going to add a few hundred parking stalls over here, we're taking away quite a bit as we build Millcreek Common Phase 2. On the city piece of property that we own over here, we might like to do another smaller wrapped parking structure, right? Does it make sense to, give the development partners in that some sort of step back relief if they're going to pay for the parking structure that provides a community benefit, and it gives us a little extra parking and it helps kind of replace and activate that side with some more retail? That's part of the question that we're asking.
Thank you.
Other questions?
So I just have one more and follow up on Victoria's question. So looking at Richmond versus, say, 1300 East, is when the second phase of Millcreek Common is built, will that remain a road? Will it be is that then the edge of like phase 2 or?
Phase 2 is of the common is that area wrapped around the green between Chambers and Woodland. So there's still, and then the property in between that and Richmond is currently, the north piece is currently developed, and the south piece will be improved here this summer. I don't know, did I miss something on your question?
No, I'm just trying to think of if we're making considerations. I think, we're sitting here looking at all of this, but if you think about this side,
Oh, yeah.
You have Harmon's and you have, Brickyard over here, and it seems like we're not addressing that. We're only going to that, like Victoria said, a minor street versus, are we not gonna, I guess that's not in the city layover zone, 1300? It's commercial?
1300, the way I understand it, Richmond, which is, 1300 East, but we call it Richmond north of 33rd, right?
Okay.
Is, and don't quote me on this, but it's, I believe it's a shared road with Salt Lake City there, and it's right down the
okay.
center.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, so there is, that's why a lot of it's blue.
And Jacob, did you have any questions? Okay. And also, Jacob, when we get to our planning commission discussion, you can feel free to unmute and just let us know that you want to chime in. All right. And thanks for covering the community council recommendations. That was really helpful.
Right, right.
Appreciate
I
that.
try to, you know, Francis and I both, and I believe all of staff tries to put in there, obviously, you know, the vote, you know, attach a letter if we get one.
Yeah, I
But
saw
think-
Jamie's
I
letter
think
in
it
there.
helps that you guys to have a little bit of a narrative of, hey,
does.
this is what happened, this is what,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay. Well, then I'll open up the public comment portion for this application. Did you have anything that you wanted to offer? Okay.
He's here for the next piece.
Okay.
My staff report.
Okay. And I just want to check with Elise, nothing's come through streaming? Okay. And also, Robert, nothing's come through in email about this? All right. Well, I'll close the public hearing for this application and bring it back to Planning Commission for discussion. All right, commissioners, thoughts?
Well, as I sort of foreshadowed, I feel like I would be more willing to allow step backs in the area north of Miller on Richmond. And I also feel like I'd like to reconsider maybe which options you make available in which places. So, I mean, I, in general, like the idea of the public benefits option, except I don't really see affordable housing as part of the look and feel of an area. So to me, getting rid of step backs is about coming up with other ways of having a welcoming, having a little bit of breathing room, having it feel like walkability. So I'm all for affordable north of Miller, but I feel like the only options I would like to look at for the part that's more the city center would be the ones that have to do with open space and maybe parking, you know, the architectural elements, but not the, yeah, let's look at what those are. Yeah, so I like the open space, I like the, as I said, and maybe the art and historic, but to me, the affordable housing option, as I said, doesn't have to do with what an area looks like. So I would prefer to put that in another area.
I did make an error. The staff report said, in this same option, said 50 spaces, a minimum of 50 parking spaces, where the presentation says 100.
Yeah.
And it's always meant to be.
And the code itself, the proposed draft said 100 as well, so.
And to that point, the one above, the open space here mentions 1,000 feet, and in the actual copy, it lists 500 feet. So I was curious which one is the
Let's do 1,000.
1,000?
Yeah.
1,000 and 100.
1,000 and 100.
100 parking, 1,000, okay.
Yep.
Other thoughts, commissioners?
I actually think we should do something to have alternatives to setbacks. The medical office building is a good example. I think just having some architectural feature that makes it more friendly versus an absolute setback is, I think, is fine for the community. I guess a couple of things for me from the mapping perspective. I guess I kind of feel like 33rd is a huge corridor. And to me, the stuff facing 33rd, the side streets, I'm not so concerned with. And I think, Robert, this was why we originally started this conversation, was if somebody's in one of these small blocks to the north, they could end up having to have setbacks on all four sides of the street. And if they're building a big development, and then all of a sudden they have no building room because they're setting back so much. So I think we should think about, you know, if they're on 1300 and Highland, those need to have setbacks. But if they're on the side streets, maybe they don't. on 33rd, to me, the side streets, 1300 and Highland, maybe not, but the 3300 South that faces Millcreek Common, that section right there to me should be green. I think we should force setbacks to things that face the true city center.
And that's kind of what I'm trying to represent here.
Yeah,
But you're saying you want maybe a green on 33rd?
that's just my
All
opinion.
of
I just,
33rd?
I agree.
I feel like we should make it, this area around the common, the most walkable, bikeable, entertaining green space that we possibly can. So I guess I don't know. I guess I could be in lieu of a setback if they're gonna give us green space, and I'm not sure 1,000 feet. In that case, like in that space on 3300 between Highland and 13th, to me, they should give us a bunch of space if they're not gonna set back there. Because it literally is gonna be then right into the windows on this side of,
Right.
Right, so I think it is important to understand that they do have a corner plaza requirement. What's the square footage of that corner? Was it 500 already?
It's 400, it's 20 by 15, 20 by 20. Corner.
So they already have to do 400 square feet. This would kick it up to like 1,400, right?
okay,
And so I think it's important to understand that all these are in addition to the requirements that we already have. So like if we're saying, give us extra sidewalk, it's going to be sidewalk in addition to the sidewalk that we're already asking for. And yeah, I mean, fair point, right? We want to make sure that this is walkable and well-connected. I mean, one of the challenges that we have with Millcreek Common is that we've taken the hearts of 2 blocks and turned them into public spaces, and that's pushing everything out toward the side, right?
Yeah.
And in some cases, right, our step back requirements are pushing up against these developable sites on both sides, and you know, there's a definite trade-off there, right? But you know, I note that, you know, Millcreek Common in both kind of phase 1 and phase 2 is significantly bigger and significantly wider than what even the city center master plan envisioned, right? And that is having kind of that is squeezing the balloon, right, on either side here, because we're greedy, I guess, and we wanted all this great space in the middle of the block.
Go ahead, Nils.
I don't mean to complicate it by throwing out another idea, but
No, do.
I
We got
like the idea of having options and having flexibility, and I think these are good ideas. I like the idea of maybe even approving, particularly I like option 2 and option 3. You could do either or. I mean, if you meet the requirements of one, that's great. If you meet the requirements of the other, that's great, because it seems like a win either way. So if it's an option, maybe not even limiting it to one, but maybe doing more than one, because if we like them, and if they work and they're a benefit for the city, then approve them both. Just an idea.
Thank you.
so would you think about, like, let's say let's use all 3 options. Do we think about saying, but you can only have a percentage of each one of them? You know, so that there would have to be choices of the 3 options and not end up with all option 3 or all option 1?
Well, I think if it's a benefit, I don't think you care. If you're getting the bargain for benefit, but that's just my opinion.
To kind of take the 3 options and lose the titles and just have like the benefits and say you need to pick.
If you qualify under A, B, or C, you
Yeah.
get the kickback on it, step back.
And I like that idea where they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. I'm not a fan of option 1 because I think that opens up for a really large massed building, where at least option 2 puts it in a box so that we've got limited size. So I really like the idea of having either option 2 or option 3 being alternative options available to them.
Steve, any thoughts? You can.
It's not a bad idea.
So how do people feel about limiting the ability of having, getting rid of step backs on like 3,300?
Yeah, but personally, I would agree with that. And I had a couple of just thoughts too, and it's with don't want to get too much in the details. Directionally, I think it makes sense to, because there's a lot of parcels, and so trying to create a code and say, hey, because you mentioned like it's hard for the one size fits all right now, but I feel like we may be getting back to a one size fits all. I was leaning on liking what EMCC recommended, Jamie's letter, where there could be a development agreement or something when we review that. And I know that these are conditional. However, if they meet the requirements of the code, we won't be able to really impose any additional things. And so I know that we do have a little bit of leverage in the conditional, but if
In the standards of approval.
the standards of approval, if we said, hey, we want to do all this additional stuff, the developer could be like, yeah, they don't have to do that, and they would be right. I'm not trying to hamper the development, but I think that some of those, anyway, back to, so some of the options, it's hard to weigh them, and I don't think we need to get it, because you have that huge list of options. And
Oh, the design enhancements? you
yeah,
mean?
all the design enhancements, all those different things. There's 9 categories, and each of those had.
Right.
But I think if we could pare that down, and I'll just give an example, and not that I don't like art and historic and cultural amenities, but to me, that's really subjective, and trying to say, well, how much and to what level, how big does the mural have to be, or what's the quality, or are you doing a bronze statue, so does that mean, does that trade off? So I feel like things like that are subjective are.
What if it's a bronze statue of all of you?
Then we could maybe work with that.
Hey,
yeah.
that's just me. Maybe.
Yeah.
And what if it's 2 feet tall or 20 feet tall?
So I'm not saying that I don't like that. I mean, I think it's great. You went through and got a lot of good ideas, but I think just quantify that and say, hey, developer, okay, you can be relieved of this step back.
Right.
And then they throw a little statue and well, see, there it is.
Well,
Good point.
our philosophy with option 3 was that, you had to do one big thing plus one small thing, right? And the big thing that we contemplated was parking, 100 spaces, open space, 1,000 square feet, or affordable housing, but you also had to do some sort of art, cultural and historic amenity, and 5 of those kind of design options.
Yeah. So I thought would be
Three. Sorry.
some of those options and pare them down. We would discard some of those and say, and make that list smaller.
Sure.
Get rid of some of the subjective things. Another question to you, or just comment more, is, I'm not opposed to having a shared parking agreement, but also if it was a strict 100, let's say you had a smaller development that they're like, yeah, we can't do 100, we could offer 40 because they're a smaller development, and maybe
there's a tier system.
yeah, maybe that the size of their building,
Dictates how
yeah,
much
that
parking, right?
so something like that, because we don't know exactly what's going to be coming in. Now, that said, I think if we pare down some of the preferences and then put a little bit more language on some of them, like the parking, and then had some way to really make sure that it's meeting the intent of what we're trying to do, so we don't just codify it, and then they say, well, yeah, here's this little thing, this little koi pond that we're going to stick over here in a corner.
Right.
Because I know that the idea is, we have the mass of the buildings, and if once it's built, that building is there. It's going to be there for at least 50 years. And I wouldn't want to trade off. It feels like there could be an imbalance. We still want to make sure that we don't have the canyon feel. But how much of that are we willing to give up to say, have a little koi pond in the corner? So that's why I'd I think we got to be very judicious with it.
No, you're absolutely right, and you're extremely methodical thinking through it that way.
Yeah.
In terms of let's make sure that the map is where we want to have where we would like to see eligibility, and I think it goes as far as making sure the design enhancement too that they have to choose from is matches maybe that particular corner or section. Maybe one doesn't fit the other one, and in terms of that, I do kind of like the development agreement idea because it added some flexibility about, well, this might work really good here, it might not work really good here. But I don't know. I don't know how how that would play out. And I just didn't give it, it wasn't one of our options.
Right, because that came up, it seemed like in the EMCC. But that seems like something that we may be able to, the developer can get what the developer needs, and we can get, as the city, what we need, because there are still a lot of parcels. And we could say, hey, yeah, this one is over here on the, southeast corner versus northwest corner. They're different areas, different parcels. So I kind of lean towards that, like pairing up, or, paring down the options.
Right.
Maybe changing the map and having some kind of
So
improvement.
from what I'm hearing, maybe let's remove the art, historic, cultural, and the affordable housing.
Yeah, maybe change the part. My thought where I really am going is I think it'd be great to take this feedback and do some work on it, and then, adjust things like the 100 spaces or 50 or 500 square feet, 1,000, and we would review it again, and then be able to put our stamp on it. My opinion I would prefer a continuance.
I think this is moving forward. From what I understand, there's some constraints, and the building season's coming, and we were trying to get this wrapped up into the zoning code update. But that could still be part of your recommendation too.
Yeah. Could it come back to us
I guess what I'm saying is you could ask.
So the city council is going to do their first reading on the zoning code update on the 24th. And their second reading is going to be on the 28th of April. I wanted to have a draft that I could put into the code for them to review on the 24th, but that doesn't mean we can't revisit this with you on April 16th. But I think for the sake of getting something ready for the city council, I'd love to at least have some direction, right?
One more thought too is what about, so the current step back, if you're over 40 feet, you have to have 20 feet of step backs, and you can make those into 2 step backs of 10, or could you make 3 step backs of?
I'll tell you, developers haven't availed themselves of that, right?
Okay.
We thought that would be an interesting tool, but they just haven't. They haven't been interested in that. I think partly because every time you notch in a building, right, it costs money. That's what they tell me, right? And so more notches, more money.
And I think the code is the actual ordinance. It's not in the, I kind of summarized it in the staff report, but I think it gives you the option of just doing 2 10s or 120. I don't know that it has.
What about if we had on some of these, not to look at the map and decide it now, but let's say on some of these areas, like, well, we still like the idea of step back, but rather than 20, it gets knocked down to a 14 or a 12. So you have 6 and 6. Does that provide relief? I mean, it gives more buildable space, but then, like Francis, you said, if it's still a notch, I don't know if they care that it's a 6-foot notch versus a 10-foot notch. Maybe.
So one option is to just say here are areas where the setbacks can be reduced to 5 feet or 10 feet or wherever, but with exceptions or with alternatives, right? And here's the area where they can be completely eliminated with alternatives, right? If that's your concern.
Well, I guess where I'm going with that is, so that could be an option saying, hey, you have this list of, you got to pick 5 things, but if they only picked 3, you could say, okay, well then you didn't pick 5, but you can get, it's a mix of both. You can get a 6-foot step back.
I like that idea.
Things.
I don't want, I will say I want to kind of keep it, I don't want to say keep it as simple as possible, but I'd like to keep it manageable for staff and not make it too cumbersome for the developers and staff to kind of rein this in. But I do like the idea, going back to your requests and then, Francis's response. Maybe there's some time there where we can take the feedback, go to first reading, and then kind of do a session where we just knock out what your final thoughts, your final recommendation, or whatever.
Do they give you feedback at that first reading, so you can then, you have all the community council, you have ours, and you have theirs, And you can say, this is now, we're going to try to put this all together.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Diane.
I was just going to add, I actually think that I would like to see the affordable housing stay in as an option because it is the city center. And if we're going to try to, be an equitable city, then I think we should have affordable housing within the city center overlay zone if somebody is going to build a building. Now, I don't know whether the percentages are right, but I kind of feel strongly that we should really have affordable housing in the city center.
Like, keep it as an option if a
Yeah,
developer wanted
Yeah.
to use.
I mean, are they going to, in lieu of those setbacks, say the setbacks are 10 feet along a 100-story building, does that allow them to create some kind of studio apartments in that setback for somebody?
And I am completely for affordable housing. And along Richmond, I'm completely fine with even making it easier to get rid of the step backs. And encourage affordable housing. It's just that I don't see it, I don't like it as an option in sort of the core area, not because I don't want affordable housing, but because I don't want to eliminate step backs and open space. So it's about a design issue. So I would love to split those areas.
okay. 20% is, and everywhere I looked, 20% was across the board. I mean, and keep in mind, 20% is included in a market rate development too. Is developers, I don't think would balk at 20%. Anything more than that too might not. It might not pencil out for both ways, right?
And these would be the same as other affordable housing, deed restricted for like a
Right.
30-year type thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but we can craft with the notes that we have. I mean, we could craft a fourth option, right? With some, go to the city council, maybe even come up with a fourth option. It'd be nice to kind of craft that fourth option, or land on something tonight that we can move forward with, and then come back and mull it over a little bit more.
Right, right.
From the standpoint of the map, can we just talk maybe just about the map? Because I know that's one of your things you'd like to have. And I'll just throw it out there and then you guys can say whatever. I think it should still be green along Highland to 33rd. And I think 33rd South across from City Hall, that block, whatever that is, between 1300 and Highland should be green, but the rest could be blue. And I agree with Victoria that on the Richmond side and all the smaller side streets, I think it would be fine to go away from setbacks. As long as, like, I think your concern is, like, there's a lot of little parcels in there. So what you don't want to have happen is have 3 different developers all say, we don't want setbacks, and then we end up with a wall down one of those little side streets, right? I think that's sort of, I don't know how to think about that.
In the meantime, and I know you guys have probably are already aware of it, a good example too of zero step backs is Villa Vista. I mean, I think one of them, Contwood on Highland has like a 5-foot step back. But I mean, that was, those 2 large buildings were built in TCOS, and there wasn't any step backs. And you get a really good feel, and a lot of it has to do with the stuff we did for street improvements, the trees and the ballards, the bollards and the street lights and all that, and angled parking. But that doesn't have any step backs, and it has an exceptional curb appeal, and it's worth looking at. But I do know you're not alone, and I've heard that before. We do want to prevent the wall, the canyon. But from what I'm hearing is basically the 33rd South block, north and south, between Highland and Richmond would be green.
And on this side, I mean, the west side's already done. I mean, it's being built right now.
Right,
So
and-
it's
and-
just this side here.
And it has a significant step back
So, yeah.
reduction, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if I can get down to brass tacks, right? Like, the city wants to build a parking structure on the east side of this property, right? And we don't want to own the whole thing forever because we want to offload it. I will tell you, developers are telling us that we can't build on this thing if you want your parking structure and if you're insisting on the step back between Chambers and 33rd South. It's just a flat no for them, right? And we're not doing this for affordable housing. We're not doing this even for multifamily. We're trying to actually attract commercial development here. And so this is where it gets kind of really difficult, right? Because we're up against kind of things that we value, competing values, right? One of which is activating the space, providing kind of a retail opportunity on the east side of Millcreek Common, which we say we want. But also there is this element of of creating a really wonderful streetscape, which we want. And for what it's worth, as staff, right? And the reason why I kind of hit on this public benefit option is because we think that best encapsulates a reasonable trade-off, because there is a real trade-off, right? For a building that might not have a step back south of Chambers Avenue here on the south side, but in exchange, we get a parking structure, we get activated retail space on Millcreek Common, we get enhanced design standards, and so and we can still maintain that minimum sidewalk that we insist on as part of the city center overlay zone. We might even get some extra open space. So that's kind of where that is one example. That's not the only example that we're dealing with, right? We're dealing with a number of properties where there are real constraints that the step back requirements impose upon us. But it really comes down to what do we want as a city and what are we willing to trade off to get it? Because we probably can't have everything.
In my opinion, for over here is because since it's opposite of commercial, the Walgreens, I'm less concerned about a step back there.
Yeah.
But I do agree, like, I think 33rd, opposite of City Hall, so just the south of us, maybe that should be green.
Well, and I guess, I'd be okay if there was some creative way to set back as long as we get our wide sidewalks and landscaping and all that kind of stuff. But I just kind of feel like that corner is the city center and we should,
Yeah, I mean, it's the gateway when you,
Sure.
when you drive in, right?
Now, we're not changing setbacks, right? At all. This is just, are we going to expect the building to crawl back, right? Above a certain story? And does that materially change the impact of the street? I think maybe not, right? Like I do take some comfort. I would probably feel differently if the mountains went this way instead of this way, right? But fortunately for this discussion, it's not going to break the mountain view, right? So that's good news. But again, like I said, we're not dealing with setbacks. In fact, under one of Rob's options, the setback will actually increase to accommodate widened sidewalks. But yeah, it's tricky. I get it.
It is tricky because you're trying to salvage those, those meaningful city center design standards, but you're also learning from lessons, moving forward, and remaining economically viable. We need to be competitive too, right? We want good developers to come in and build and have that fair trade-off.
So my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that as a planning commissioner, we make decisions based on what we think makes most sense for zoning and for land use, and that economics, while that is important, that's not really one of our major considerations. That's what is determined at the city council level.
I mean, I think the city council will be concerned about, the resale value of the property, right?
Right. I mean, that they will. That's because we aren't presented in our staff reports, we are not given economic considerations as one of our,
No, but economic development is one of the goals of the plan, right? And so is shared parking, and so is activating commercial space on Millcreek Common. So kind of the question is like, when those goals collide with the step back goal, what's more important?
okay, thank you.
Yeah, economical factor. You know, it's one of the 13 standards of approval too. Or excuse me, the detrimental effects is, you know, is it economically, you know, destroying the neighborhood, as we hear sometimes, you know, in different rezones and that. But it's definitely a factor to consider.
And I think that, you know, back to the reduction, you know, from 10 to 7 or 6, that, I don't know how much benefit that gives the developer to make it more attractive property, but I'm thinking like if you were going up, you know, east on 33rd, whether that project across the street is 10-foot step back or 6, I feel like it would probably give you the same feel at 6 than it would at 10, because it still is articulating back. I don't know if there's a magic reason why 10 is the
In
number.
terms of the developer, and I'm not a developer, but you know, that space, can they use it? You know, oftentimes when they're doing mixed use, you know, a lot of them will do a step back anyway because that's amenity space and they love it, and they can achieve that with 5 feet sometimes.
Yeah.
But it, you know, if it was a random odd number, I think we want to be, you know, try to think of a specific, you know, step back in mind that doesn't just, you know, at least harnesses from both sides, from the developer, and is that meaningful enough for us to, you know, to mitigate massing?
What I'm kind of suggesting is, you know, if there's an appetite for it, maybe we look at all these areas and say, hey, you know, 20 feet divided however is too much. Maybe that could be changed to a lesser number with no requirement to do anything differently. Like we just reduce it. I think we could still get a same feel.
Well, a good example, and I'm just throwing it out there, would be the neighborhood streets: Elgin, Villa Vista, Miller, Woodland. You know, and excluding the corners, maybe that would be an idea. Where it's like, hey, we don't. I mean, these are less visible. They're north south facing. You know, that would be a thought to exclude those areas.
So you consider it setback at 10 feet, but in your little design standard list here, enhancement list, number 5, you do address that maybe they can integrate something that's only 6 feet deep, right? So whether it's a facade or a mini balcony or something like that.
Right.
So does that suffice sort of what you're thinking? And then can I ask an odd question? So I'm just thinking about what's already here. So, you know, they're tearing down Linda's furniture now. What's going there? Like, is that going to be a big development? Is it going to be something that we even are concerned about on this map? Because they're already tearing the old building down.
Right, and there is, we don't have a formal application, but there is a mixed use development there. If you've been, you know, you guys, maybe Victoria and Sean remember, there was a proposed project a few years ago.
4 years.
You know, it was, it included Linda's, Aqua-V, you know, and it sort of narrowed down the scope of that project into a much smaller one that I think would just be where Linda's is at. But it's a mixed-use development with ground floor retail.
Okay,
Much smaller, though.
just curious.
Yeah.
I mean, because that solves the issue, like if something's not going to be built there that's 40 feet. Doesn't matter,
Yeah.
right?
You know, I just try, you know, I had a conversation with an architect, or excuse me, a developer, and I was asking, you know, can you quantify like some, you know, universal number of what the loss is on a step back, a 20-foot step back? And it's hard because if it's commercial building or it's a residential building, I mean, the numbers could go either way, but he ended up calling me back a couple weeks later, and a good universal number, and this is not me, this is from a developer, is about a 20%, 25% loss, for a 20-foot step back, because that's everything from the second floor up, is lost space, right? And I'd like to say, well, it's not our fault, it's our design standard, right? But we still want to remain, economically viable. We want to attract them, but we need to be fair, but still maintain, the minimum of what we'll accept, and that could be in terms of the option trade-offs and the design enhancements too. I mean, I think we could come up with something very easily based off of tonight.
Yeah.
And
Well, does it work for you? Oh, let me just check, Jacob, I'll just check with you since we've had a discussion. Anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Chair Lamar. I would just like to say that I generally favor the public benefit option. I really appreciate what staff put together here. It looks great. The economic argument really speaks to me personally, and staff highlighted it in their presentation that, if the city's already losing out on some developments, there's an economic cost to that. And that shows up through higher taxes for the rest of us. So I think that's one way that we can help alleviate the tax burden on the residents of Millcreek is by adopting some of these changes to allow developers to come in and build what they want to, or in conjunction with the city, it sounds like. I do believe that affordable housing is really important, and I agree with Vice Chair Reed that it's not necessarily like a design aspect, but I would encourage and do support somehow having affordable housing incorporated into the city center. I think it adds diversity and brings different folks together that may not typically mingle. And if I personally am not that concerned about step backs, I understand the importance of setbacks, but setbacks don't really concern me. I view city center as kind of being Millcreek's downtown, and downtowns typically can have tall buildings, so it's not as big of a concern for me. So I would even support trying to reduce step backs even in these green areas where we're not even allowing any, or we're not allowing the flexibility, if that'll bring in more development to help support the tax base. That's the end of my comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Jacob. So Robert, for moving forward, I don't know if there's appetite for continuance. If there is, does that still give you what you need for coming back again in April, and we'll finalize it?
based off the conversation tonight,
Yeah.
come back. That'll give us time to do a first reading, and then we
Get
come
city.
back and
Yeah, and I think
do a final, or, finish the discussion and make a motion.
yeah.
Do you have thoughts?
And commissioners, that seems like a good option. The ones I was looking at would be for staff to look at the map. We'd look at the, some of these, what do you call them, design standards? Like
Design enhancements?
Yeah, look at the design enhancements in total and maybe pare that down. I mean, this is just me personally, but I kind of lean towards what Nils was saying is, maybe we just have these in the categories and then it's not this is the public category or whatever. It's just like you've got to pick, 3 or 5 or whatever the number is. Maybe even look at some of the parking. I love the idea of the shared parking personally, but I think we could alleviate, let's say we could pick up 35 shared parking spaces somewhere. And the developer could do that. I think that could be something we'd want versus like, well, you don't meet the 100, so no, nothing. So, things like that. Those are, in commission, that's just what I'm looking at is the reasons why we would want to look at it. They have some direction and then we would come back. And I think then we'd be ready to say, yeah, little input, and then we could give a recommendation.
So in the interest of getting this done so that we hit the building season and get the updated code adopted here, if we recommended approval with a laundry list of recommended changes that you would take a look at for purposes of the first read for the city council, if we still did the first read for the city council at their next meeting, in between that, is it workable to come back for just a second eye from us in between the first and second reading?
Absolutely. Yeah, you could do that. You could say, here's our motion. We recommend approval, but we have these concerns. And then, we would just bring it back to you as a staff item before we put a pin in the final, in the final code update, which would happen on the 28th. There would be time for that.
Because that would be my recommendation, especially
that
where we're
works.
just a recommending body anyway.
Yep.
Right.
So maybe continue it based on,
Well, not necessarily continuance. We go ahead and
like, do it tonight?
approve it tonight with certain recommendations, but even with the approval with recommendations.
Oh, gotcha.
Let you still go to city council for the first reading, but just come back to us as a staff
As
item.
as a word, yeah, right, gotcha.
Yeah, to get additional input. That way, we're not holding up the timeline with the city council.
We could do that.
You can do
It's
that.
essentially the same thing as continuance, it's just you would have
Right.
an approval, and then we would have be able to look at it and give any more tweaks or suggestions for their second reading.
So with that said, then, we'll land on maybe a crafted fourth option tonight with some ideas, or we're just gonna do a laundry list of our concerns, and then Francis and I will come up with something.
I think either, my opinion is either way, it could be a fourth option where you kind of condense those things together, or you just say, hey, we're just gonna, kind of what Nils was saying, we'll just put these, I think you arrive at the same endpoint, have a fourth option with all those in there, or,
Yeah, and see, when you talk about a fourth option, I'd get rid of that first option. I'm not a fan of that. I don't think that that's going to be real. I think it's open to more abuse than the other two. So I would, take the public benefit as one option, put it in a box that, no bigger, the current option 2, leave as current option 2, and then maybe introduce a new third option of some type of a development agreement. If they can't satisfy the requirements for either the public benefit option or that option 2, then there's a third option where they can come in and do a development agreement. Here's a laundry list of standards and stuff that are up for consideration, and none of them are going to be less than either option 1 or option 2, but they're just going to be different types of design stuff. If they can negotiate a development agreement that incorporates enough of those that it makes sense to get rid of the step back, so that one's kind of flexible, that would be kind of the direction I would go. And then as part of that, talk about where you would recommend that the areas remain green as far as no step backs being available, and incorporate your comments, which I think are excellent, about the 100 parking spaces and 1,000 square feet scaled somewhat to the development, so you don't get this huge development with 100 parking spaces and a little small development that's still required to do the same 100.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, usually those little small developments wouldn't be required to do a step back either. Most of them, the smaller ones,
because they're.
Depends on how tall it is.
right?
But I guess it is possible, but what's the likelihood that you would get something that wasn't very wide, but it would be tall? Or is that usually they don't do that?
Well, we've got this kind of parcel over here that could be that wide and tall. It's that Nevada-shaped piece over by Millcreek Common.
Oh, the old bar area?
No, it's our parking lot right now.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah.
that site actually lends itself to a relatively narrow, skinny
Yeah.
building.
Yeah.
This
so
one
there are
over
some.
here it also is really narrow on one end.
Yeah. The former Hudson or
Yeah.
whatever, yeah. And I think that's expired, so it'll come around
That'll
again.
have to come back. Yep.
I wish you would have had that as a motion, all those things you said.
Can you want to do that motion? But can I add just one thing, that also the subjectivity aspect of that, not just the scale, but removing these arbitrarily subjective.
Yeah, I think paring some of those things down, I think that would actually be easier too, Robert, is if you pare down some of the
So what I
subjectivity things.
thought, and you know, I kind of came up with this just tonight. And tell me if you agree with me. So during this, you know, when Francis and I take a closer look and come up with something, I would probably go through this design enhancement list and tie it to that map and make each, you know, tie these to geographically to an area where it makes sense. Like why, you know, why have, you know, an open space option in an area where, you know, we don't need it, or vice versa, right? Or something. So that way, you know, we get the list that they have to choose from is appropriate for that area too. That's a thought.
Is that a lot of parcels? Isn't there like 20 parcels you'd be doing that on, or?
It'd be, I might even just do it by district, neighborhood district,
yeah,
mill
yeah.
center, you know,
Okay, not parcel based, yeah.
no.
Okay.
No,
I'm just
probably
trying to make sure you're not doing an extra
more work than I
10
have
hours
to.
of work. Yeah.
Right.
Let me take a stab at this.
Take a stab at it.
Okay, so based upon the staff report and all the discussions we've had here and the comments and so forth, I move that the Planning Commission recommend approval. And what's the wording on this? Is this a text amendment?
Oh, can you go to my PowerPoint?
Yeah, the amendments to the city center overlay zone regarding building step backs with the current option 1 eliminated as an option and potentially an additional option created with minimum design standards in conjunction with a development agreement to provide a little bit more flexibility to look at scaling the 100 parking spaces and the 1,000 square foot open space based upon the size of the project, going through the design enhancements and identifying areas or districts or blocks where those make sense so that it's not just a wide open thing across the board. Removing the subjectivity on both the design, the extent possible on the design enhancements, and especially on the public use option with respect to art, historic, and things of that nature. Have some more defined, make that, if that's going to be an option, have it more defined standards to remove the subjectivity from it, so we know what we're getting in exchange for that. And then I believe and I'm open to comments on this, as far as the green areas that will not be eligible for step backs, what I'm hearing is 33rd South in between Highland and 13th East would remain green and not eligible for the step backs.
And for both sides or just the south side?
Both sides.
Both sides, okay.
I just assume they stay blue because they have it as an alternative, but because I mean, I agree with the way Jacob that mentioned that, but anyway, but I'm okay with the step backs there too. I just think that I'd rather just choose what's most economically viable for the developer and for the city, because what's most economical viable for the developer probably is for the city too, for tax purposes and everything. So to have that, I just soon have the options, because
Maybe have a third color where that's 5 feet. Instead of just ineligible, it's reduced. That way we're still on the negotiating table, right? That's this area, like Diane was saying, is the most important for parking and open space and the pedestrian feel. Well, if we have some option there to, you know, it's 5 feet, but you got to give us, you know, a pocket park or bigger plaza or something.
And
That's a corner lot too on that old Hudson piece.
make the alternatives, harder there, that they,
Yeah, maybe if we leave that area blue, but roll into that the development agreement option where you got more flexibility to decide, are we gonna get rid of the step back completely or pull it back a little bit in exchange for some of these others? I think that's where the development agreement could be really helpful in that area.
Okay, we've got a motion by Vance
Kind of.
and
Second.
and a second by Lofgren. Jacob, I'll go to you for your vote on that motion.
Elise, can you read that back?
I can.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
over here, and you want to request that it come back?
Yeah, and request that we get additional comments on this in between the first and the second reading. Yeah, that was one of the other things as part of it as well. So that would be included in the motion as well.
And Jacob, just for procedure, I just want to find out if, like, just confirm if that was just in jest or if you really needed to have a recap of the motion.
Let me take my best shot at this. So I move that the Planning Commission recommend the amendments to the city center overlay zone regarding building step backs with the additional input that they consider for purposes of revising the language before going to city council to, rather than just using just the public benefit option, also allow what's currently in the staff report as option 2 as an alternative option, and explore the possibility of a new third option that would allow a development agreement with more flexibility as far as maybe modified step backs instead of eliminating completely, and in exchange for working off of a list of defined standards for what would be the minimum requirements for the relief from the step backs under that development agreement option, going through the design enhancements, eliminating subjectivity as much as possible, and exploring the possibility of tying design, eligible design enhancements to specific areas, blocks, or districts. And on the public exception option, either removing the art and historic option, benefit completely, or going through and giving us more defined standards on that to make it more of an objective standard rather than subjective and open-ended, and having, and on, with that, especially with the development agreement option, I think my motion would be to leave 3300 as blue. And then, even though this is going to go to city council for a first reading, I would request that this come back to planning commission next month in between the city council's first and second reading for additional comment and input.
And I think, Vance, there was also
Oh, the scaling.
scalable, yeah.
And on the 100-foot or 1,000 feet open space and the 100 parking spaces, explore the possibility of scaling that to the size of the development rather than a one-size-fits-all.
And I'd like to make, I don't know if it's a friendly amendment or an amendment, but I'd like a vote on it, on whether or not the section between Richmond and Highland should, on 3300, whether that should be blue or green, and I'm going to propose that we keep it green
Richmond and Highland.
on 3300, so that we keep it so that you, that step, yeah, so the step backs are not, cannot be removed on that section.
Can I second the original
Setback or
motion?
step back?
Well, did you want to add that to a motion?
Well, no, have him second the original motion, then let's go into discussion.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so motion by Vance, second by Lofgren, and then
On,
discussion.
as far as the discussion goes, why don't we take a straw poll as far as what people want as far as that green section on 3300, and then if needed be, we can modify the motion accordingly.
I thought yours was, were you talking about 3,300?
Yeah, we're talking about right here.
Right here?
Yeah.
To not have it be blue, to change it to,
To green, so that there would, so step backs could not be eliminated.
On 33rd South and between
33rd South.
1300 East and Highland.
Yes. Right. So
yeah, so
Wait, that's the, yeah, so that's the thing, the straw poll. Where, do people want that blue or green?
blue.
Blue, be strict.
Whatever that means. I'm fine with the blue now, after the discussion.
Okay, I would be green.
I'm green.
I'm blue.
Blue. Okay.
So the motion as seconded stands. Well, it doesn't, I mean, that was just a discussion to figure out if we want to, if you want to make an alternate motion, at this point you can, but the motion is initially proposed stands with a second.
So what you're really saying is not a friendly amendment that you accept.
That's it.
Right. Even though I have good intentions of being kind and friendly.
So you could do a substitute motion.
Right, but so like half a block. No, I'm not going to do that.
Okay. So motion by Lofgren, no, motion by Vance, second by Lofgren, and then Jacob will go back to you for a vote on that motion. Okay. Let's do just a roll call. Anderson?
Yes.
The Soul?
Yes.
Lamar, yes. Reed?
Yes.
Vance?
Yes.
Lofgren?
Aye.
Okay. There you go.
Thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
yeah, that was.
Yeah, that was a really good discussion too. Thanks for engaging.
We want to put that in a script font and frame it and put it
Yeah,
somewhere.
yeah.
You can make a mural of that and get a step back eventually.
Yeah. Okay, approval of can we do it together, combined approval? Approval of the February 19th minutes and also of the February 26th special meeting minutes as presented in our staff report. I'll make a motion to approve those as we've seen those in the staff report.
Second.
Second by Sol. All in favor, say yes or aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
And Jacob? Okay. Minutes are passed, and then updates from Francis.
I want to just turn the time over to Tim Watkins he's the community planner with the Wasatch Front Regional Council. And Tim will be talking to us about the Wasatch Choice Vision Land Use Vision Update. He's going to be doing a quick presentation with us and with the City Council. So.
Oh, yeah. Thank you and hello. And I just want to commend you for great work tonight. It's fun to see implementation in action and not just to hear the conversation about it, but see it in this amazing setting to see things happening right before my eyes. So thanks for all of your great work and setting a great example for centers planning, implementation, and community implementation and planning. So, and that's right on topic with the message tonight, which is really just a recap of where we're at in the 4-year update. Every 4 years we update the Wasatch Choice Vision, and under that umbrella of the vision is the Regional Transportation Plan, which is informed by the land use, the Wasatch Choice Vision land use map. And so both of those topics were explored in the meeting. By the way, how many of you, I need training on how to go backwards. There it is. Any of you able to attend our fall workshop? I think this is the picture of the North Salt Lake area, sub-area that was held upstairs. And so I'll just give you a little recap of some of what was talked about. And then we'll look at the comments that were provided by Millcreek, a Millcreek table, amongst other cities' tables in this, again, beautiful setting. So cool. But here's the workshop from one of 8 workshops held across the region, multi-county region. And the opportunity was to look at transportation and land use and active transportation. Tonight, and our current focus in refining the vision is on the land use. And so we hear a lot of talk about centers, a centers-based strategy for the Wasatch Choice Vision. And these are the center types, noting that it's nuanced and can vary, and cities can interpret them differently, and the scale varies. But there are many other land uses that are important, and some with regional significance, and that our residential areas are critical and necessary, but centers in particular are challenging to implement, as you can attest to, but can bring about incredible results and provide more choices in terms of how people can navigate to get to where they need to go, whether it's driving, taking transit, walk, bike. Typically more choices provided in those centers. And so these are the land uses that were explored at the workshops. And a new land use added this time around is the retail district. That's not been part of our prior year discussions. And these are areas that are not likely to change or evolve into centers or other uses and committed retail, if you will. And those also being a regionally significant use. So we have some new images that depict what the potential of centers might be at their different scales, along with the definition of a center being generally walkable, mix of uses, more intense than surrounding areas. I don't feel like you need these images based on the conversation I just heard and your experience here, but it's fun to nonetheless explore the different types and scales of what depicted here as a prototypical neighborhood center. 1 to 3 stories, it might be served by bus, and emphasizing buildings along streets, green spaces activated by ground floor uses, and parking de-emphasized to the rear and good on-street parking. And then bump it up a notch to a more intense scale of up to 4 stories. City center might be a type of mixed-use development that doesn't necessarily require structured parking, but might have some entry-level tuck-under or structured parking and might be served by enhanced bus. Here's urban center, and that could get up to maybe 8 stories and might be served by bus rapid transit, maybe even rail service, and the higher intensity and taller building stories supported by structured parking. And many of you are probably familiar with the implementation support that Wasatch Front Regional Council offers through the Transportation and Land Use Connection Program. And I think you've got a project that's recently kicked off was the Millcreek Station, along with the South Salt Lake, sorry.
Right.
Station.
So we've availed ourselves of that facility a lot. City Center Master Plan, the City Center Overlay Zone Ordinance that we talked about today came out of a TLC grant, as did the Millcreek Transportation Master Plan, the Sidewalk and Trails Master Plan, the Meadowbrook Stationary Master Plan, and this new one that we're doing jointly with South Salt Lake.
Yeah. And I had to look back at the date of the 2018 City Center Master Plan study, which I think was a TLC award, which set the master plan in place, the vision and master plan for what I'm now standing in and presenting you in this cool building. So appreciate your efforts to follow through on good planning and make wonderful things happen. So here's an example of a workshop map, and these were put down at each table. This one's in South Davis County. And again, we're focused tonight on land uses, although at the workshop, it was also confirming existing regional transportation plans, those being rail, roads, or major roads, and then a draft of the Beehive Bikeways. And Beehive Bikeways, basically active transportation facilities between centers that could allow for that mode of transportation to be supported by great destinations. And then here's what the workshop maps typically look like after the workshop. And so you can see our job, WFRC, was to interpret these lively conversations. And when a sticker was put down representing one of these land uses, then we had to kind of take our first best estimate of the actual kind of shape that should take place on or hold to on the ground. And here's your map, Millcreek, the conversation. And so we saw some acknowledgement of centers and land uses. An employment center is that pink color. And you also see some transportation comments, a lot of active transportation ideas put down. And so here is, this is not your community. I'll show your community current status of the update to the land use vision. But this is the process that we've gone through is we send out emails to all the city planners, 58 communities across the region, and asked for feedback as to how we did at WFRC with the first take of interpreting and updating land uses. And so we received a lot of great helpful comments back. The hatched areas are what we heard from city planners. And just to clarify, and we're continuing to get that feedback as we've now sent an email to, so the city planners helped us send out a better draft product to all of you, city leadership. Essentially, everyone who was invited to the workshops was sent the updated email inviting cities to take a look and confirm that the updates to the vision are, in effect, represent your vision. And we've not done that before. We've not really sent it out to all communities' leadership. And so this is a new approach. And that's really, I think, the purpose of this conversation this evening is give you a chance to look at it, comment on what your map looks like. And just before we look at that draft update to the map, I'd like to just provide you a visual of the process we've been going through. So does this have a laser pointer, or I guess that, no, right. But you see where we're at is use the city stakeholders, leadership, and just prior to that was the local planning staff comments. And into April and May is when we'd like to have the vision amended and updated at the Regional Growth Committee and Wasatch Front Regional Council meetings in May. And so we're hoping for feedback from communities in as early as April as possible. And then this becomes the new basis for a projection of households and jobs across the region for the year 2055 is kind of the horizon year that we're going to be looking forward to. And this will allow our analytics and long-range planning to look at those potential future locations for jobs and households and the proximity between services and residents, and test those in what's called the real estate market demand model and the transportation, the travel demand model. And those kind of work together and explore different scenarios. And then in preparation for coming back to you in the fall of 2025 for another round of workshops that focus more on a preferred transportation alternative, again, based on the collective land use across the region. So this is just a graphic of the current regional transportation plan. It was adopted in 2023 and it goes to the horizon year, looks out to the horizon year of 2050. And then the process we're going through now is to look at update from the during 2024 to 2027 preparatory to adopting Wasatch Choice Vision update and Regional Transportation Plan update that would be from 2027 to 2055. So the email that we send out to all of you includes the Wasatch Choice Vision, land use vision, and you can, there's a setting where you can toggle between the current vision, which is 23 to 50, and compare it and see any changes from 25 to 55, the draft update. And so here is the Millcreek draft 2025 to 2055 land use vision. And we hope that you see similarities here to what you saw as your comments from the workshop. And the little legend showing the centers, those tend to be kind of the more intense colors, perhaps reflecting land use intensity, and then other regionally significant land uses. And I could open up the map and we could toggle between the current and the proposed. That might be helpful, or maybe I should have sent that link to you more directly.
Is it available on the website?
It's in the...
Is it the email that you sent all our elected officials?
It is, yep, and halfway down in that email is a link to that map.
Keep talking and I'll see.
All right. So it's interesting to see a great variety and distribution throughout the community. And I will mention that the interrelationship between centers is something that we'd like to provide another perspective of. We had the opportunity to receive some state funding to provide those illustrations of different center types. And in a next phase, in the next few months, we'll be creating some graphics that show how centers can relate to each other. And when you have a string of centers, then we start to see possibilities for different levels of transit service or beehive bikeways between these centers, and may warrant more investment for increased ridership demand. Again, these transportation choices that are made possible. And I've learned a lot more about that interesting shaped Millcreek City Center up there just based on your work tonight, and hearing how you're adapting to changing market conditions as you understand them. So I'm just curious initially if you have any questions of what I've presented, or if you see anything that stands out to you on this updated 2025 land use vision.
I did earlier in the slides. There was a little animation showing a map, and you could click on the circles and it would give you information. Is that available? I just went to the website, and there's a lot of tabs and different places to look. Is it on the website?
Okay, so did you go to the Wasatch Front Regional Council TLC or Transportation Land Use Connection?
Yeah, I just went
website?
I just went to the main page. And we could even look at it after.
Okay.
But there was several slides back, maybe a dozen slides, towards the beginning of the presentation. There was a little animation, that had little circles, and you could click on them, and it
Yes.
showed how it would then show.
I'd be happy to guide your staff to get
Okay.
back to that website.
Okay.
And that was basically just to see which projects have been funded in the past or present through our Transportation Land Use Connection program,
Okay.
and give you a sense of where you might need some additional support in the future.
Okay. Commissioners, other questions?
I just have a question about, at the top of this map where you had Wasatch Boulevard, can you like shrink that down? Yeah, go to the, yeah. So the city center there at Mount Olympus, you have that listed as, on the graph, I think as red is a city center, right?
Urban.
An urban center. So what's the difference between an urban center and a neighborhood center? Because I think we think of it as a neighborhood center.
Would you mind toggling left to right over that? And let's see what it currently, okay, so that's what it currently is yellow neighborhood center.
I
And
think
so,
the people who live there will have a stroke if you tell them they're going to be in an urban center.
and maybe we could go also look at your workshop map on slide 10, I believe, or 12.
Well, that might be.
And
Right.
so it's possible that we put red and should have put orange with
Yeah.
the city center. Yeah.
I think just looking at kind of these lovely pictures, right? I think it's more, it's either a neighborhood center or a city center. It's probably a neighborhood center, right? Because our code does have a hard limit of 3 stories on some of that stuff, and it's mostly going to be built out now. So
Okay. So those could go back to neighborhood center. It's a
right.
quick little action by some of our
Right.
staff. If
I'm-
you
and I-
anticipate any 4-story, it could remain or go from red to orange rather than
Right.
red. So good catch.
And
there.
and I'm not, I think these might be these two here. This is the 23rd and 33rd. This is Canyon Rim. Those might be more orange and less red. I'm just thinking about what our own general plan says about it, but
Okay, so the one furthest east along the boulevard would be yellow neighborhood center, the other 2 orange city center, potentially?
that's my suggestion.
Okay. Great feedback. That's exactly what we need, is to get this right and to reflect your community's vision.
I'm curious, Francis, what's that little square in the southeast corner, the little yellow one? Yeah.
Where Facile Taco
Is Facile Taco
Oh,
gone?
yeah, that is Holiday. Yeah.
Is Facile Taco gone? They made really good tacos.
No, it's like small little strip mall with a gas station or something.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yes.
Just don't tell me they're gone. They're really good.
Yeah.
That's just what that little yellow thing.
Yeah,
And the gas station. whatever
yep.
it is.
Yeah.
And then, Francis, would you mind going to the previous slide that showed the TLC, Transportation Land Use Connection, or you brought up, there we go. That would be earlier. I lied, it'd be later. there it is, 16. No. I think it's, keep going up. And there it is, slide 9. And this is the
Yeah,
slide that you had a
this is the
question
one,
about.
yeah.
If you engage that into the presentation mode, oh, it is animated. And so this is just a little recording of how to navigate the website and select a project status to see which ones are active and, you know, currently in process, or those that are completed. And then we have yet to list the 2025 awards, which I understand there's active or ADA update. It's a small award, but meaningful for retrofitting and improving pedestrian access to your buildings and so forth. So we appreciate that application and all the good work you're doing in the community. So,
Thank you.
yep. Thank
Appreciate
you
the
all.
update and for hanging out with us for almost 2 hours before we got to you.
It was enlightening, and I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks. We'll see you Monday.
Okay. And then we've got our calendar of the upcoming meetings. Any sense, Francis, how big the April meeting will be?
I don't have a clear sense about that yet.
Okay.
I don't think we'll have 2.
There will be more when the new code is adopted. I'll tell you that much.
There will be more.
Oh,
So we get ready.
oh yeah.
Put your vacation requests in soon. Okay. Commissioners, anything to bring up to the commission? Okay. All right. I think we're done then for the night. You ready for a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say yes or aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Thanks, Tim.
Jacob, I think that was you voting yes, right?